You're joining the Dr. Business Podcast with Dr. Hollen, where we talk business sprinkled with a bit of Jesus. Our goal is to help you simplify business, impact more lives, and increase your profitability. By sharing the stories of influential doctors from various specialties, we help you get creative in connecting with your target market, increasing your exposure in the community, and collaborating with local providers so you can reach more people and avoid burnout. Thanks for tuning in, and we're excited to help you navigate success in your doctor business. And now your host, Dr. Hollen.
And thank you for joining us for another podcast. I'm Dr. Hollen, and today we have Dr. Krysti Wick joining us. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Wick.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
You bet. We've got a lot to chat about. Now, Dr. Wick is a chiropractor, also a coach, a speaker, and a practice growth strategist that hails from the humble southeastern Wisconsin. And over the past 12 years, she's built a thriving pediatric and family practice, and it grew over 500% from 2013 to 2018. That's incredible, Doc. And I've heard her described many times by both of our peers as kind of like the Rachel Hollis of chiropractic when it comes to empowering women in the field, and she's generated praise from across the nation too. Her latest venture is the Illuminated Squad, and that became a rapid success with a wait list to join her community and her coaching. So she's got a lot of value for us to add from a practice perspective and just in business as well. So Dr. Krysti, thank you so much for joining us again.
Yes, I'm so happy to be here. I love it.
Well, now, can you fill in the gaps for us and kind of tell us a little bit more about who you are as a person, but also maybe the accelerated version of what practice and business looked like when you got started, and then fast forward to today?
Yeah. So, I mean, really, you did a great job. You kind of covered all the things. I'm also, of course, a mom. I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. And obviously, the biggest thing that defines me at this point as a person is I'm kind of juggling the double CEO hat of having a full-time practice and a full-time coaching company. So that's really kind of my life, is just business strategy and making sure that patients are taken care of and clients are taken care of, which sometimes gets a little tricky because, there's kids in the mix too.
Yeah, I was about to say, and kids are getting taken care of.
Yeah. There's three different sets of humans that need taken care of. But as far as my practice growth journey, I started out probably similarly to most everyone as a one-woman show. I didn't hire a CA right off the bat. So my first 18 months in practice, I was completely solo. And of course, I started off thinking I was going to light the world on fire with practice. And that's just not what happened. I struggled, and I ended up in a pretty insurance-based, pain-based type practice because I just didn't know how to communicate chiropractic. And so, it took about 5 years before I had a couple sequential events that really just kind of gave me the wake-up call. I needed to seek out more information and to push myself to learn and grow. And so really those first 5 years were quite the struggle. And then from that point on, after I had my son in 2012, things just kind of rocketed forward. And that's when I grew my team and, kind of grew my influence in my community, and things really transformed from there. So.
Wow. I know there's a lot of women that are listening, and myself included, sometimes starting a family or having a new little one join is kind of a scary thing and almost hesitating, slowing everything down. But for you, it seemed like it was quite the igniter for your flame in practice.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Actually, he had I had a traumatic birth with him, and he had a lot of issues at birth. And so that experience really just kind of shook me to the core of, it was just a wake-up call. As I said, it just showed me that I was really playing small and I was letting fears get in the way. And it also showed me firsthand so many other parents around me that just didn't have the information that I had. And I had to figure out a way to use motherhood as the fire starter, as you mentioned, to make sure that I was not allowing my own fears to impact what I was capable of. So yeah, it absolutely was. And still to this day, he's kind of, every time I look at him, he's kind of like little walking, talking version of reminding me to be my best self every day for sure. So
that's awesome. And that's so powerful. And then fast forward to today, you've gotten into a beautiful office space, huge. And now you have a team of doctors. how did you develop the vision or the focus or the style of practice for the practice that you have today?
Oh, that's such a good question. I'm completely frank. I'm one of the most transparent people ever. I don't think I really had a vision. I just kind of, things changed so rapidly that, my first associate hire, I literally was just drowning. Like I couldn't keep up with practice. I couldn't keep up with the administrative stuff for running the business. And so I started, to be honest, just grasping at straws. Like, I need help. And that didn't obviously work out very well with not a lot of foresight in that initial phase. But I think a lot of people get really stuck on that you have to have everything figured out. You have to have your vision, kind of your I's dotted and your T's crossed. And that is not at all what happened for my life. I really just focused on being my best self every day and being willing to share the message, even when it was uncomfortable and even when I was scared of judgment and whatnot. And so focusing on those little baby steps, like just the next right step, that just continued to lead me to, this is what now needs to happen in order to support this growth. And now this is what needs to happen to support this growth. So I was not really like a big old dreamer at the time when I started. I literally just was kind of sick and tired of hiding. And so I just learned to say what I needed to say. And then I figured it out as I went along. That's the truth of the matter.
Yeah. Thank you so much for just being raw with us and being real with us, because I have so many conversations with so many successful doctors like yourself, and it's easy to forget about that stage, right? Because now you've developed so many success habits that you do, and we can talk about how to drill that into your life. But getting started, I think it's common that we all kind of wing it and figure it out, or hire a coach such as yourself so that we can shorten that learning curve as well. But yeah, thank you so much, because so many people are going to be able to relate to that and feel like they're not totally like screwed before they ever get started.
I think it's one of the biggest analysis paralysis things in chiropractic today, that so many doctors are like, well, I don't know what my vision is. And I'm like, that's okay. Like, you don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to focus on the next right step, or what your heart is and your gut are telling you right now. So yeah.
Absolutely. I remember when I graduated, somebody told me I had to have a vision. So I didn't even know what that really meant, but I figured out who I wanted to treat. And then not much longer, like I was treating athletes, then not much longer, I treated almost the exact opposite of that demographic for the rest of my career. So it shifts along the way as well. Now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about investments. What would you say in your term of being in practice so far and being a doctor, and having multiple different types of businesses, what's one of the best investments that you've made so far?
I think the biggest thing is I continuously just invest in smart people in very specific ways. So obviously, I pretty much have always had mentorship or coaching from about that 5 years into practice on. So that's a really important one for me. But even when I'm like hiring, or, in fact, I literally just got off the phone right before this with someone who was going to help me hire a director of operations for my consulting business, because I think it's so important to just recognize, if you try to be a jack of all trades, that's honestly what creates a lot of the stress. And I always know, like, I would so much rather pay someone that has really figured out how to be an expert in this particular thing, and then use that to create more ease for myself, that I'm not trying to now, leverage all the free internet information available and hodgepodge something together. So at every stage of business, I've kind of leveled up that mentality. Obviously, early on, I didn't have the funds to do that quite as much, but now it's really, anytime I feel like I'm really stuck, or I'm repeating similar mistakes because I am trying to figure it out on my own, I just go and seek out someone that's an expert in that and has a completely different skill set and set of just like strengths and makeup than me, so that they can help me do what I do best and they can do what they do best. So just coaching, mentorship, and, leveraging whatever other resources that you need in both practice, business, whatever that may be. Yeah.
I love that. And I love that whenever you did get started, even though you may have been winging it, you had the wits about you to start with low overhead, whether that was an option or not, like that's a great way to get started, and then as you make money, start to kind of reinvest back into the business and back into yourself. So thanks. Now, moving on, what would you say is one of the most successful failures that you've encountered? Or if you don't resonate with failure, what's a struggle that turned out to be a blessing for you in business?
I totally resonate with failure, and I'm chuckling because I really feel like that question is like my whole business journey. I feel like it's just, that's how you learn, right? You have to be willing to fall on your face, and that's really uncomfortable for me. I'm a total recovering perfectionist, so I lived a lot of my life at the crossroads of perfectionism and procrastination. So if I didn't think I could do it like over the top, I just wouldn't even try or start. So I think honestly, that's probably the biggest quote unquote failure, is when I first started just evolving my practice and telling people what they needed for care plans instead of what I thought that they wanted to hear. And, just being very brutally honest about what was possible for them. I fell on my face a lot in the first, year to 2 years of just figuring out how to communicate in a way where I could share my passion and I could be really compassionate with them in the same way, right? I think a lot of us as chiropractors, we can take it way to the extreme where it's like we're either not telling people what they need or we end up being kind of shamey with them. And I had to find a very comfortable medium, and there was a lot of falling on my face while I found that.
Right.
That was probably the biggest struggle, is just figuring out my communication style and how to authentically share my heart and my knowledge in my expertise in the field with all different types of patients in a way that felt good and congruent to me every day. So
I love it. Sounds like by facing your fears, that's actually the very thing that launched you forward too. Not
totally.
not just in practice, but like in our profession, like people look up to you for communication styles.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that's exactly why I'm just super vocal that you're not going to get it right on the first time. And still today, like every day in practice, I still say things that I'm like, ooh, I wish I would have said that differently, or I wish I would have pulled out this analogy. And so I'm just always really transparent that it's a continuously evolving journey. And I think that's so important for us to honor and respect, because people deserve you to be that real with them. Everyone that steps foot in your practice, they deserve that from you. And so you have to be willing to own that and own your little side steps when you feel like you could have done a little better. And that's why you just got to practice. You keep practicing and make it better. So
for sure. And I'm going to circle back around here in a moment to your communication style and what worked best for you to connect with people. But before I do that, I also want to ask you about some big risks that you've taken, because you've gone from a very small business and you've boomed and exploded and popped. So what's some of the risks along the way that were scary but actually paid off?
Every time I've hired someone has been very scary. So every time I've added a new position in the practice, I always hire slightly before I think that I'm ready, so to speak. And so every time you feel that responsibility for like, this is someone's livelihood and this is their family. And, so that's always been super scary. Right now I'm in the process actually of building out a very large office building that I purchased, and I still have 2+ years on the lease of my current building. So right now I'm very much in the thick of like, what am I going to do? So that was a huge risk to buy the building, and on complete faith, I'm just sending prayers up every day that a fantastic business wants to rent my current space. And honestly, pretty much everything, starting my consulting company obviously was a huge risk in the industry. Every time I get up on stage and speak, I feel like it's a risk, because to be honest, I think there's still a lot of judgment in our profession, and a lot of everyone kind of wants everyone to fit in this cookie cutter mold. And that's so like, I'm so different than that. So it's just all about risks. I have learned to become risk tolerant. That's for sure. So yeah.
Okay. I like that. It just seems like a common theme is like failure and risk is necessary for growth. Now,
Absolutely.
You talked about hiring people. Would you also, what would be your advice as far as firing people?
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, I've had to fire more people than I would like to admit. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
a bit of a bleeding heart. So I have made a lot of hiring mistakes based on seeing potential in someone and really being connected to developing that potential, even when they don't really have interest in developing their potential. This is one of the things that I have learned about myself. So I mean, the first couple times I had to fire someone, obviously I just wanted to pee my pants a little bit. It was not enjoyable whatsoever. I mean, it's still not enjoyable, let's be honest, but I have learned now that when I hold on, I'm actually impairing them from moving into something that they were destined for, that's going to make them truly happy. I mean, I've never had a situation where it wasn't working out that I couldn't see on both sides that it was creating stress and, dis-ease on both sides. And so at this point, I'm pretty accustomed to, if it's not going to work out, obviously the whole adage of, firing fast is something that I'm not going to say okay with, because I'm still not really okay with it, but I've learned that it's just part of business and growth, right, that you have to be the one as the leader, as the CEO, you have to be the one to fight, not just for your business, but for their potential as well.
Potential and for your patients too, because I mean, I feel like we hold on, regardless of how quick it happens, I feel like as a majority, we hold on way too long. Now, when you were talking about some of the risks that you've taken, especially with this new building, you mentioned about like you're going on complete faith. Share with us, how has your spiritual life played a role in your business life?
Yeah, I am such a spiritual person. So every night when I lay my head down on my pillow, I'm not only thinking about gratitude, but I'm also just thinking about, people that I want to lift up and, emotions I want to lift up. So I think faith is a huge part of that risk taking that we talked about. You really need to have that peace within yourself, that there's other things at play, whatever you believe in, our listeners, there's other things at play that you have to have faith in. And I'm just a firm believer that God created me to make decisions so that I could continue to choose the best path for my life. And obviously he's continuously playing a part in that, but I love to just have conversations with him on why choices are popping up in my radar and what that's trying to teach me, and what my goal is as far as what people are going to be impacted and touched by each of those choices. That's a constant thing on my radar, is just praying for the people in my circle. I'm crazy protective. Like once you are close to me, I'm like, these are my people. And so I'm always really thinking about how to make sure that faith is impacting their lives and my choices in business and in life, how that's creating their best version of life for them too. So
that's awesome. And I can kind of feel that when we talk about spiritual life, like that's a personal relationship and a real connection for you.
Yeah.
That basically guides and dictates what happens next.
It absolutely does. And I'm a huge believer of just, it is so personal for all of us. So I'm just one of those people, I'm a very intuitive spiritual person. I'm not as much in like the structural spiritual stuff as I am in just like the intuition. So
awesome. Yeah. I love that. Now I'm going to switch gears here a little bit. And during this podcast, I always like to go over and give our listeners like some bullet points, some things that they can actually implement when it comes to connection, exposure, and collaboration. So when it comes to connection, and this is where I'm kind of circling back around a little bit to your communication skills and what you learned, but what are some ways and some techniques that you've been able to connect to your target market?
I think the biggest thing that has helped us connect as a whole practice to our target market is getting really clear on how each of us in the practice communicate. So circling back around to that, I definitely early on with Connection tried to mimic a lot of what I saw in mentors and other people in the profession. And that became really difficult for me because it wasn't authentic, obviously. And so I have spent an extraordinary amount of time learning about how I operate. So I am a complete nerd when it comes to like StrengthsFinder, Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, Colby Index. Like all the things. I'm obsessed with that because I really think that all of us were put on this earth with a responsibility to really understand how we operate innately. Because if you can take the time to figure that out and understand how you're always going to default in showing up, you truly can connect with your target market and your patients at a completely different level, because you're not just going through the motions of life. I see so many people, obviously as a coach, just kind of showing up and, well, I know who I am. This is who I am. But most of us don't really understand how we're being perceived. And so that has been the biggest thing, obviously, inside the practice, but so much in our, copy skills when we're doing events, everything that we're putting out in our small community is based on how we innately communicate. So yeah.
I love that. And you did that for yourself, but I love that you also filtered that out throughout all the people in your office as well, because it's also about connecting to your target market, but understanding internally how you guys work together and how you can operate as a unit instead of individuals.
100%. It's one of the best things you could do for your team. And if you continue on that journey, like my team knows, not a month is going to go by that we're not talking about something of this nature, because that's helping them become their best selves. And that's my job as a leader, is giving them the tools and resources to show up as the best authentic version of them. So
I love that. Yes. Now the next one is exposure. How have you been successful in getting more exposure in your community and kind of becoming known or becoming a local celebrity in your community? You've done that well in your practice, and then taking it a step further, even with the Illuminated Squad, you've really become quite known and getting speaking gigs even within your profession outside of your community. How have you been able to gain that kind of exposure in practice and in coaching?
Yeah, in my community, it's a small town. It's about 30,000 people. So I do things very differently than someone that practices in a more suburban or urban area. So I would say the biggest foundation that our practice is built upon is relationships in the community. So I have served on so many boards, committees, obviously did a lot of networking my first 5 to 7 years in practice. I really think that those relationships are what has created a lot of the change that we see in our community, of how well known we are with regard to family chiropractic specifically. And then definitely I'm always sharing my passion in those moments. So I'm talking a lot about kids' health. I'm doing a lot of sponsorships, and I'm investing and sponsoring things that I feel are important with regard to kids' health in our community. I'm really just a walking, talking, breathing, you can see the core values all the time when you're interacting with me. And that has been the biggest thing for our community. So that's for sure the biggest thing on that side. And as far as in the chiropractic side, I really honestly think that I've just been pretty unapologetically myself from the moment that I started sharing things. I really do my best to, every time I'm sharing a message on social or on a webinar or on a podcast, whatever it may be, I just think about what I would have wanted what I would have needed to hear when I first started in practice, or in those first few years where I was really, really struggling. And so I'm just consistently showing up, thinking of that version of myself, and remembering that there's so many chiropractors out there that just need to feel like not alone, that they are going to be able to figure this out. And I think just consistently showing up, even when honestly the results, there's plenty of times that I'm posting things on social media to crickets. And so it's easy to get in your head. It's easy to start worrying about that, but that's not what it's for. Because if the one person that needed to hear that was like me 12 years ago, heard it, then I'm okay with that. So it's part of honestly my healing journey too. So that's been the biggest thing for me, is I think just continuing to show up and speaking my mind and speaking what's on my heart, even when it goes against the grain or it's not quite exactly what everyone would expect. So,
well, there's a common theme throughout a lot of our conversation today of authenticity, and how even though that's what we might be scared of, is to show our true self, like that's the very thing people fall in love with.
Yeah. I feel like that word I love the word, and I've really kind of transitioned it into, I just want to show up innately. Like innate is at the core of everything that we do. And I want to make sure that my communication is just as aligned with that innate potential as anything else. So
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned that you like to post things, you want to make people feel like they're not alone. And I always even tell people, like, we need to also take the responsibility to get off our island, right? Like, that's one of the reasons that I did this podcast. So, and that leads me into the topic of collaboration. How have you had the opportunity to collaborate with other doctors, whether it's in your community or in your profession, or even outside of your specialty? And how has that served your practice?
Mm-hmm. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is really in our profession. So in a, speaking, teaching realm, there's been a lot of collaboration, especially over the last year for me. And that has been super refreshing to just kind of watch the authenticity and, innate communication of other people that are, on a platform in our profession, and being able to kind of self-select, if you will, who I feel like is aligned with my message and my heart and what I feel is really important for our profession to know and learn about. So that's been really something that has been a blessing to me, for sure, of just seeing. I really think that we're in this phase now, especially as women, where a lot of female leaders in our profession are really starting to step up and share our voice and share our perspective, which is so important because, all of us know about how many, schools are over 50% women, but when you're getting into 5, 7, 10 years into practice, those women aren't as represented because of various things. And so it's a huge goal of mine to continue to collaborate with female leaders in our profession to make sure that we are all lifting each other's voices up together and making sure that we're uniquely heard, because we all have a little bit different spin, a little bit different perspective. And obviously we are a good representation of all of those women. So making sure that we are collaborating to share all of those different perspectives so that as many women that are trying to work forward in our profession feel like they have someone aligned with them that they can look up to as well.
Absolutely. And thank you for stepping up, because a big part of that, in my opinion, is opportunities, especially now more than ever. Opportunities are there, but are we actually stepping up and stepping into these roles, right? So it's our responsibility to do that as well. So thanks for being the example for so many in our profession.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. So now, Krysti, we're going to enter the fire rapid round, okay? Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right. Excellent. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and you'll answer with quick, short answers, okay?
Got it.
All right. So in hindsight, what should be the 2 top areas of focus in practice and in business?
Communication and leadership.
Love it. What is the best advice that you have ever received?
Well, that's a good one. Don't be in a rush.
Don't be in a rush. That is so simple, and I love it.
That is, not everything is an emergency. So especially for my ladies listening, that's the best advice. Don't be in a rush, and not everything is an emergency.
Awesome. Now, what is one thing that you see consistently in every successful business owner?
Ooh, an understanding of themselves.
I like that. And then the last one is more about giving back. What has been a good resource that you've utilized?
I would say just one name, pretty much, because all the things that she has, Brene Brown is probably my number one resource.
I love it. And I've read so many of her books and really utilized so many of her things. Something that always has resonated with me and never left is what is the most generous assumption I can make about this situation or this person or whatever. I love her too. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Will you let us know, Krysti, how can folks get a hold of you? Because I'm sure there's some people that might want to pick your brain about practice or business, or even some ladies out there that are looking for their tribe and looking for guidance in business. How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah. You can, of course, find me on social. I hang out much more on Instagram. It's more my jam. So at Dr. Krysti, but my name is spelled all goofy. So DrKrysti. You can definitely find me there. You can shoot me a DM. And then the website is theilluminatedsquad.com.
Awesome. And I'll be sure to put those links in our show notes as well so that they can access that quickly without misspelling your name. Awesome. Well, Krysti, thank you so much for your time and dropping some knowledge for us to implement into our businesses. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for starting this platform, my dear. I'm so excited for you and pushing your influence to a completely another level. So
awesome. Thank you so much, and thanks for being part of it. And to our listeners, thank y'all so much for joining us. And if this message touched you and kind of hit you in the heart and something that you can actually implement, I want you to share it with your friends and your colleagues, and be sure to subscribe. Thank you so much for joining us, and stay classy, folks.